Middle of the week, starting to catch up to you a little bit, but please pay attention here. This is one of our more important sessions on the week where you can take away a lot of useful information. But before we do that, some general returns.
Winston Miller, where you at? Winston, you need to make sure you make a phone call home today. Okay? If you need to borrow a phone, let us know. It's real important, you need to call. All right? Guys from Elkton this morning, whenever you left the water bottle on the table in the dining hall, nobody's going to claim it? All right. Nobody wants to do the push-ups for it. I don't blame you.
All right, before we get going here, I'll finish up at the end. We have a different schedule this afternoon. We'll go over that, so do not leave at the end of this morning's session until I've addressed you guys. All right, we're going to get going with our session today. I'll let Coach Walton introduce our speaker for this morning.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's gotten recovered a little bit from Reddy Schnaub. It was a zombie run out there that I saw this morning. Naps. Everybody get a nap in after breakfast? Good. Our speaker this morning, we've been trying to bring in some people in the area of sports psychology. The whole concept has really become that much more to the forefront. And so today we have with us Dorian Hayden. Dorian is a doctoral student at JMU. He ran track at SUNY Brockport, one of the state schools in New York. He worked at Michigan State, taught some classes at Michigan State. He's worked with a variety of different teams. And so he continues our tradition of trying to bring him in different people from different areas. And so please give him your attention as he goes through things. Dorian?
Thank you, Coach. So as Coach mentioned, I have a background in coaching track and field, primarily sprints, running sprints as well in college. Similar to what I told the coaches earlier, I'm an expert in what I'm going to talk about today. So more of like the background on how like the mental performance piece, but you guys are more the experts on how this actually applies to you. So a lot of this stuff, I'm going to try to make it apply to you, but I'm also going to ask questions. Feel free to ask questions as well or share stuff on how maybe you want to apply this to yourself or how you see this maybe applying to yourself as well. A big one with this too, anything mental performance related, is that it obviously applies to your performance as a runner, but a lot of this stuff you can also apply to other areas in your life as a student, as a friend, as a brother, as a sister, whatever it is. But it's something just to keep in mind. Again, obviously we're going to focus more on that performance piece, but realize that a lot of these skills can also be applied in other areas as well. So to get started, I'm going to have you guys do an activity. What might be easiest is if we just do one row is one group, but before you guys start moving, I'll explain it for a little bit. So what I'm going to have you guys do, I'll give you a couple minutes. I won't tell you how much time you have, but I want you guys to count in order, so going in a circle from 1 to 100. But with this, every time you get to a multiple of 7 or 7, you have to skip it and just continue going. So you go maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15. So counting all the way through to 100 and keeping that in mind. Before you start talking, I know there's a lot of maybe confusion or questions. Before you start talking, do this without skipping. If you do mess up, just start from 1 and go through it again. So again, as a group, you guys can start moving now. Just get together in a group so you guys can hear each other. If you need to use the aisles, if you need to get up and use the aisles, please do so. And just go ahead. Any questions? Does everyone know what they're doing? All right, go ahead. Do you want to just join with them in the back? All right, we'll go another minute or so. Keep going, another minute or so. Th 30 seconds left. 30 seconds left. All right, let's wrap it up, All right, raise the hands. Which group got through to 100? Okay, we got a decent amount. Okay. So once you guys got to like 69, what was the next number? Okay, just making sure. Okay, good job. Yes, good job. All right, as you guys were doing this, and I'll get to kind of why we did this in a second, what did you feel during the activity? What kind of came up for you in general? I'll just ask it right now like this. I'll add some more feeling words if you need them. But what kind of came up for you? So just raise a hand or just shout it out. Go ahead. Unsure of yourself? Yeah. Go ahead. So confidence maybe? Go ahead. Yeah, good. What else? Go ahead. We couldn't hear each other? Okay, what did that bring up? Frustration, confusion? Yes, perfect. What else? Yes. You felt rushed? Yeah. Anxiety? Yeah, so you have to think about the numbers, but go as quick as possible. So a feeling rushed, maybe it's a little bit of stress, anxiety, yeah. What else? Back there. Okay. Sounds like your brain hurt from doing all the math. Sounds like being overwhelmed a little bit. I know it's also early, and you guys had an early run too, but yeah, go ahead. Oh, nothing? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I thought you had more. Okay, perfect. All right, one more. We'll have one more right there. You couldn't get in. Sorry, you couldn't get into the group. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you couldn't get into the groove. Maybe there's again maybe a little bit of frustration, maybe a little confusion, maybe a bunch of different emotions too. All right. So when you made a mistake, how did you respond? I have some phrases up here. So internal self-talk. Like, what did you say to yourself? What was your emotional reaction? What was your reaction when others messed up? Yes. Okay. So you pretty much said like we have to lock. So you communicated it. We have to lock in and just kind of speed through it. Please listen up when people are answering. What else? What else came up when someone made a mistake or you made a mistake? Yes. You said it was pretty frustrating and annoying. Yeah. Yeah, when you made a mistake, kind of blaming yourself maybe. Yeah, getting annoyed with yourself. Let's have one more. What else? What else did you do, say, think, feel? Can we have one more? One more. Yes. It was encouraging? Okay, yeah, encouraging others, encouraging yourself, both? Okay, perfect. And then the last one, I know I asked like if you got through it or not. For the groups that didn't go through it, this might be a weird question, but were you successful? Yes? No? For the groups that didn't get to 100, were you successful? I hear yeses, I hear nos. Okay, why were you, I feel like I heard a yes over here. Why yes? You got to the end. Well, for the groups that didn't get to the end of it. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So you got a lot better at it. Yeah, and that's the main point I want to say too. And we'll talk about that in a second. Even though you maybe didn't get through it, or you didn't succeed, or you didn't do what you wanted to do, you were still ideally successful because you got better at it. You got more smooth at it. It got a lot easier. Whatever it is, you improved. You noticed your mistakes. You improved on those mistakes down the line. So it's not pretty much with this. The main message for me is it's not just about the outcome. It's not just about, oh, did we win? Did we make it? It's about, did you actually learn in the process? Did you get better at what you did? And a lot of times that's obviously what we focus on as coaches. If coaches agree with me, I hope they do. It's not just about like, did I run a PR, but did you do a certain skill, a certain technique the way you needed to do? A big thing too for this, that's why I asked about the emotions or feelings that came up, is a lot of times feelings and emotions kind of, first off, they're good. Let's say you have anxiety, let's say you're stressed, maybe you're annoyed, maybe you're frustrated. In general, feelings are good because they allow us to first off understand what's going on, but also in terms of performance, a lot of times you probably wouldn't run well if you didn't feel anything. If you just came out and you were bored, or you just like, I'm not anxious, I'm not nervous, I'm not annoyed, I'm not frustrated, you probably don't ever get a PR by that. The trouble though is, so ultimately what I'm saying is emotions are good. The thing where it comes troubling is when there's too much of it. And I feel like I've heard a little bit of it, like I felt overwhelmed. I think I mentioned it a couple times in here, where if you feel overwhelmed or if there's too many emotions going on, a lot of times that then doesn't allow you to, what it says up here, focus on what's important during pressure situations. So ultimately, if there's too much going on, you can't handle it, you can't focus on the things that you need to focus on to perform at your highest level. And then kind of at the bottom here, if you think about challenge versus threat interpretation, so challenge is pretty much, and I'll go a little bit deeper into that, challenge is what we want to have. You want to feel challenged. You want to feel like what you're doing is challenging. You don't want to feel like it's a threat. You don't want to be scared of running. You want to feel maybe nervous because it is a challenge, because it's difficult, but you don't want to be afraid of running itself. So again, you don't want to have too strong of an emotion, but to have a challenge interpretation of a situation, you have to have enough resources and support to kind of even allow yourself to have that mindset. When I say resources and support, what kind of comes up for you? So what helps you manage your stress or your anxiety or your emotions? What do you think are some resources? Yeah. Your coach? Yeah, perfect. What else? Teammates? Yep, exactly. Previous workouts? Yeah, that's a good one. So coach, teammate, for me that's kind of that social support or skill support even. If you say previous workouts, do you mean in terms of like you've done the work? What do you say? Yeah, like you know how to do it again in a sense. So that's more of like a skill level in terms too. Like you can do it again because you've done it before, or you've trained for this. A lot of times I think coaches probably say like, if you're nervous, they tell you like, well, you trained exactly for this. We trained the same time, the same day, the same time as your workout. We did the mileage, whatever it is. And that's an important piece as well. So just knowing that you've done the work as well is a good point too. Any other resources that you could think of? Yes. Other people on other teams? Okay. So you kind of established that social network with even opponents, technically. Yeah. So even having individuals from other teams might be a support system. Go ahead. Box breathing, yes, perfect. That's what we're going to go into a little bit. So that's more like a mindfulness realm. So that's, again, like an internal skill, something you can work on that can help you ultimately manage your emotions. So then obviously the threat interpretation is where you don't have enough of those resources. And a big point here is it's not necessarily having or not having, it's about, do you feel like you have those resources? Do you perceive yourself to have that social support or that support from teammates, from coaches? Do you feel like you're prepared for it? Because obviously you could be perfectly prepared, but in your head you don't feel like you are. And a lot of times that again goes with that emotion management. So ultimately what we want to have is this challenge mindset. So all this stuff in the green on the left. So what you want to go into a race or practice or whatever it is, you want to focus on that self-improvement rather than just beating someone else. You want to go in and be able to focus on yourself. What can you do to perform better rather than just beating someone else? You want to focus on learning. How can I learn? How can I learn to do things better or more easily in a race rather than just worrying about what reward I'm going to get? Am I going to place? Am I going to get a medal or whatever it is? A lot of times that doesn't allow you to actually perform better while you're in the race. Then ultimately too, I think a big point that it sounds like we have that a lot here, but a lot of times I think it's overlooked is just the joy. Like just enjoying the process of the challenge, just enjoying being in a meet, just enjoying running a 5K or whatever race you're doing rather than just that fear of failing. I don't know if people have heard of this before, but a lot of times individuals compete because they want to do well primarily just so people think they do well, just so they don't feel like they're doing bad in general. So they're worried about failure more than they're worried about that success piece. And then a big one that I heard when I talked to the coaches too is like kind of focusing on the details rather than the outcome. A lot of times you think about, I want to run a certain time in my mile or my first mile even, is not ultimately going to help you more than if you focus on, all right, I have to follow this technique, I have to follow kind of the way I need to start, or how my coach taught me how to start, or what to do with my arms or whatever it is. It's going to be a lot more helpful and allow you to focus on those details a lot better. And ultimately, it's kind of that internal versus external, or intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So it's more helpful if you're motivated from things within. Again, obviously on the left, self-improvement, learning, joy, rather than on these outcomes of what place am I going to get, what time am I going to run, because ultimately, like I said, it doesn't necessarily help you in the moment. You want to be able to control or focus on the things that you can control. Obviously, you can't control beating someone or receiving a reward, but you can't control what you actually actively are doing in that moment. So the other thing is, again, more of like an internal skill is mindfulness, and I know we talked about, someone mentioned box breathing falls under this. So reason I bring this up is because, like Coach mentioned, I work with athletes at JMU as well, and almost every athlete that I work with, I do some mindfulness technique, because we a lot of times struggle with these aspects, like that definition piece, in society as athletes, even coaches, even for myself, a lot of times I struggle with this, but mindfulness is a way to kind of manage those emotions too. So in general, it's being conscious or aware of something. So literally just being aware that something is going on rather than overlooking it. For me, the most important one is being aware or awareness of the present moment. And again, this is a huge one for me because we do tend to focus on, again, that outcome, what's going to happen next, or even what happened just now, what happened before the meet or before I started racing. Did I eat enough? Did I drink enough? Rather than being in the moment and focusing on like, how am I feeling right now? What's going through my head? How's my body feeling? And with that, acknowledging, accepting your feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations. Bodily sensations or feelings and thoughts all relate also to emotions. So again, as I mentioned earlier, emotions aren't bad. They're not inherently bad. If they get too strong, it can have a negative impact on you. But to actually adapt those emotions to get them back in that range you need it to be, you have to first be aware and acknowledge that you're feeling those emotions. And with that, you also have to kind of then, the next step is, why am I feeling these emotions? Why am I being more nervous than I usually am? Is it because I feel like I'm not prepared? If I feel like I'm not prepared, what can I do in the moment to maybe not think about that, or to kind of realize that I actually am prepared for this moment? So again, it starts with literally just knowing what you're feeling in the moment. That will then allow you to kind of manage those feelings or those strong feelings. Again, as I mentioned, that's why I have it up here twice. It allows you to focus on the present because a lot of times, as I mentioned, we look way too far ahead, we look way too far back, rather than just paying attention to what is it that I can actively do right now, what am I actively feeling right now, what am I seeing, and how is that going to help me in my performance. And then the last point is, during performance, aspects that are in the future or past are rarely important for success. And I kind of, obviously, I think I talked about this already, but again, focusing on like, what time am I going to run at the end of the race while you're at the start, a lot of times isn't going to help more than if you think about, all right, how am I getting out from the start, or what's my technique looking like at mile 3 or whatever it is. is going to be way more helpful and actually allows you to control those things. You obviously can't control the time at the end, but you can control how you run and what you focus on and what you do in that moment too. So as an example, I have up here, and the coaches will send this out to you. I have a grounding exercise. We're not going to go through it because we don't have the time, but just to give you kind of a sense of it, this exercise, again, is primarily for you to notice what's going on in the moment. And you use your 5 senses, and literally all you do is think of 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things you can feel, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And that alone ideally focuses you on the present moment. What are the things that you currently see in this room or feel, whatever it is, to again, not necessarily, pretty much not allow you to think about these other things. What is causing you anxiety, or how hard is this race going to be? Because again, obviously, like being in the moment, as I mentioned, is going to be the most helpful part in performance as well. And then the other thing too that I do with every athlete I do mindfulness with, I have a breathing technique called diaphragmatic breathing. Pretty much it's just you breathe through your stomach. So as you breathe in, you push your stomach out. As you breathe out, your stomach comes in. At the same time, you count to 4, like you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 2 seconds, and then you breathe out for 8 seconds, and repeat that over and over again. Again, primarily to help you focus on your breath, counting, and where that breath goes, to again be in that moment and just notice and feel what you're feeling. With all of these skills that I'm talking about today, they are skills. So you have to practice these for them to become effective. You have to practice these ideally in situations where you're not stressed out or you're not very emotional, to prepare yourself for those times when you do really need them. So just keep that in mind, that all of this is a skill. It's going to be, it's going to get easier as you do it. It's going to become more effective as you do it down the line. All right, another activity I'm going to have you guys do. For this one, you have to stand up, but for now, just stay seated for a second. So what I want you guys to do is just play rock, paper, scissors. So obviously, the rules are going to be rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Every match you have, it only goes to 1. So whoever wins the first match wins that match overall. But then the main thing here is whoever loses becomes the winner's cheerleader. Does that make sense? So let's say we have one-on-one going on. You win, the other person becomes your cheerleader. Now you go on against someone else. Now it's technically 2 people going against each other. Again, if you win, then you have 4 people all together. So again, it will grow and grow. And the last 2 people standing, I'm going to have come up on the stage, and everyone cheers for them. And we have 1 match on the stage. Questions? Make sense? All right, go ahead. Be a cheerleader. Be a cheerleader. quit. Raise it. Who's still going? Okay. Keep going. So again, last 2 people will be on the stage. So keep going until we have 2 people left. Who's left? 1. We have 1. Who else? 2 over here? How many do we have over here? Just 1? How many do we have over here? Just 1 or 2? 2. All right, you guys go, and then you come up on the stage, and the winner comes up on stage. All right, let's settle back down. We'll continue so we can get you guys out of here. All right, as you guys went through it, obviously there were different environments. At the beginning, you didn't have anyone cheering for you. At the end, we had more people cheering. Obviously, there's some confusion with groups, with the environment in general, obviously getting between the benches, aisles, and things like that. So the first question I want to ask, in terms of your environment overall, how did that affect your performance, if it did? All right, quiet down, please, so I can hear. What'd you say? Okay. So you're not happy about that, I'm guessing. So he says some people had less people to kind of compete against, so it was easier to kind of get up more to the top, which that's true. And that might also be a similar case in running in some instances where you might have different people or less competition to make it to regionals or even states or whatever it is. What else? How else did your environment impact you? Go ahead. You felt really what? Confident? Yeah, so you're just getting hyped up made you feel really confident. Yeah, absolutely. What else do we got? How about Thomas and Hudson? How did you guys feel up on the stage? How did that impact you? Sorry for calling you out and having you do that. You said good? Well, let me ask you this. Where's Thomas at? Okay. So for you guys, were you anxious? Were you nervous? Were you excited? What did you feel? So go ahead.
I guess it kind of like broke my focus being on the stage. I don't know.
What'd you say?
It kind of like distracted me a little bit being up on stage instead of down here.
Okay, fair enough. So you said if you weren't on stage, you would have won?
Sure.
So it distracted you being on stage and maybe like more pressure than you wanted? What about you? Were you nervous? Were you excited? You are excited? So that pressure got you excited. So again, you obviously see the difference here. So for some people, having more people supporting them or yelling or cheering kind of causes them to be nervous. That's how honestly I would be too. But for other people, the more people cheer for them or in their back, they get more excited and more confident too. So there's a difference between how we interpret different scenarios and events as well. So then the second one, how did social support, promote, or inhibit your performance? I think we kind of talked about that, but anyone else have anything specific? Did having more people make you more confident or less confident? I know someone mentioned that, but anyone else who felt more confident having more support? One, two, yeah. All right, you can raise your hands. We have a couple. What about less confident? A few, a handful, yeah. So again, there is a difference there, and it's okay that there is a difference. But obviously you kind of have to notice that for yourself. What do you think could have helped you perform better? Obviously you were forced to have a bigger crowd. Is there anything, if you were nervous, or even if you were confident with that bigger crowd, what else could have been added to that to make you more confident or make you more excited? Go ahead. Okay. Yeah, so if I changed the rules, for example, best of 3 rather than just best of 1, would have made you more confident to compete. Is that kind of what you're saying? Okay. Yeah, what else? What else? Nothing? Nothing could have helped? All right. Last question. What are barriers to creating or having an effective team environment? So obviously this was a team, especially last 2, for example, we had 2 people on stage and then 243 people cheering for them. What were some barriers there? Like what made it difficult maybe cheering, what made it difficult competing outside of that crowd cheering for you? Go ahead. What was that? The thought of letting your supporters down, absolutely, yeah. So that might be another piece where some people might be nervous because they don't want to let people down that support them. Go ahead. Okay, okay. So even as a supporter, yeah. So confusion of who you're supposed to cheer for because there was obviously a crowd of people and you didn't really know who won. So again, there's different barriers to it as well that might make it difficult to kind of continue or perform at a higher level. In terms of running, what are some barriers to perform at a high level? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Just the pressure of running, especially if you go to bigger meets. Obviously, the pressure rises in those situations. Go ahead. What was the last part? Okay. So mental barriers of like being able to push yourself more than you normally would. So again, and that's obviously pieces that we talked about a little bit already. What about injuries? Is that something that keeps you from performing at your highest? Yes, we got some nods. What about not sleeping enough or not eating enough? So there's a lot more than people are sharing. But just keeping in mind, again, some of these impact people differently than others. But ultimately, there's a lot that goes into kind of having an effective team environment. There's a lot that goes into performing at a high level. And obviously, the coaches are here to help you in the physical realm, obviously some mental realm as well. This is more the mental realm exclusively. Obviously, there's other pieces like nutrition, sleep, anything like that that can influence your performance as well. So keep that in mind. Obviously, I'm focusing on this, but there's a lot of important pieces that I'm not talking about today. So in terms of kind of the social piece that I have up here, there are pieces in terms of, obviously we talked about that social well-being that helps you guys maybe perform at a higher level in different areas, and if it is kind of in the way that you need it to be. So in terms of how it helps you with performance, it can help you cope with adversity. So if things don't go well, you can have a teammate, you can have a coach, a friend, or family member who can kind of pick you back up or help you kind of refocus on what's important. Let's say you have 2 events in the same day at a meet, like you can't obviously wallow in that one loss or that one event you didn't do well in, but you have teammates around that can pick you back up. They can help you stay engaged and motivated. So again, kind of keeping you honest, maybe keeping you focused. Even if you're doing really well, they can kind of bring you back down and keep you more realistic and allow you again to focus on what's important rather than just like, oh, I just won a race, a big race, but bring you back down and practice and like, all right, what do I need to do to kind of keep working or keep improving? Obviously, that self-belief piece that ties into all of those pieces. If you don't do well, having someone who can kind of pick you back up and give you that self-belief or that confidence that I think a couple of you guys mentioned in here. Willingness to explore, and a lot of times what I've seen when I was coaching where athletes struggle to try something new because they learned or they've done this the entire time, their entire career the same way, but now you introduce something that's different than what they thought it was, and it's difficult for them to interpret that. But ultimately, having teammates around can help them just explore it, just try it out, just see how it works, or even just how can, I don't understand what coach is telling me, how can someone else maybe who's doing this already as an athlete maybe explain this better to me? And then ultimately that constructive and empathetic communication. So constructive meaning like supportive or effective or helpful feedback in terms of running, in terms of maybe even attitude that you have during, after, or before your runs. It can tie in with like maybe sharing some mindfulness advice or kind of that mindset that I talked about earlier. And then also that empathic communication where it is primarily knowing what this athlete is going through. Let's say you didn't do well in a race, having a teammate there with you who probably knows what it feels like and can communicate that and can help you realize like it's okay that you feel crappy after this race, and it's part of the race itself, or part of the being in a sport. And also realizing that if you didn't feel crappy, if you didn't feel anxious, if you weren't nervous, if you weren't sad after a not so good race, if you didn't feel those things, it would mean you don't care about running. And obviously I think everyone in here cares about it. So again, helping someone kind of realize that it's not necessarily a bad thing that you're feeling a little crappy, but ultimately we can kind of work with that and grow from that. Obviously we talked about challenge a little bit already, but the way kind of your teammates can support you, or even friends or family, is by kind of, again, focusing on the expectations that you have for yourself. It could be your expectations are way too high, but bringing you back down to a realistic one where it is kind of a challenge that you can actually accomplish, but it is still difficult, and that's what challenges should be. Something you can accomplish, but it's gonna take a lot of effort to do so. Responsibility and accountability of being at practice, listening to coaches, listening to teammates, following along, again, being supportive to other teammates is another part of you as an athlete becoming better too. So that's where teammates can help. And ultimately, I think support is pretty self-explanatory in terms of what I mentioned already, promoting learning, also building that trust where you can be vulnerable, where you can tell someone that, hey, I am feeling really anxious. I need someone to help me with this. And it also can help with each other's development. So obviously, if you have social support, you can help them develop as well as them helping you develop. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard this kind of, I don't know, this talk of teaching someone something is the best way to learn for yourself. And that goes in with this as well. Being able to teach someone some of this mindfulness stuff or even a technique or whatever it is going to help you a ton with your own development as an athlete as well. A big one too that I really focus on a lot, I think every single time I meet with an athlete, I focus on the increasing positive emotions. And that's where social support is really, really helpful. A lot of times we don't really pay attention to the positive things. We could have a phenomenal race, feel really good, but we made one mistake. Maybe we kicked too early at the end. Maybe we didn't get out hard enough at the start. And we like kind of just focus on that. We don't pay attention to what we did well. We highlight so much of the negatives. But actually focusing on the positives, as well as the negatives, obviously, but focusing on the positives can help you stay motivated. And obviously through that, I think it's really important to have an outside person watching you race, and you come back and you're like, man, I messed this up. And they come up to you and you're like, but you did this right. You did this really well. And again, helping you motivate yourself to continue. As you realize you're improving over time, it makes it easier to keep going. It makes it easier to kind of keep fighting or keep kind of putting that pressure on yourself as well. And then redefining success. And I know I asked that question with the first activity we did, where teams that didn't get to 100, I asked them, were you successful? And we had a group that said, we were because we got better. And that's a piece of that redefining success, that it's not just about the outcome. You're not gonna PR every single time because you feel well. There's gonna be times you run well, you feel really good, and you're not gonna PR, but the important piece there is how can I feel good? How can I do what I need to do more consistently? There's always something you can improve that goes beyond just kind of the outcome that we talked about. And lastly, understanding the process. And the big piece there is, first off, focusing on details. Again, technique maybe, rather than just that outcome. But also realizing kind of the dynamic nature of the sport. Obviously, you're at a camp, which is with people that maybe some of them you have never met before, coaches you've never seen before. Every year in high school, there's going to be a new teammate on your team. There's going to be new technique that you have to learn. Having social support can help you manage that change, manage you kind of not freaking out when there's something new introduced, helping kind of adjust a little bit easier. And ultimately, again, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of this applies to stuff outside of sport as well. So academics, personal life, careers down the line as well. All right, so this is the last slide. Well, sorry, technically second to last slide I have up here. So I want to hear a little bit more about you. As I mentioned earlier, I'm more or less an expert of what I talked about up here. You're the expert on how this actually applies to your life, how you can actually utilize some of this stuff. So I want to ask you this. So first, on the right side, I have kind of a summary. So the challenges, challenge versus threat mindset, mindfulness, social connection. On the left, I have some questions. So the first question I want to ask is, what is something that you will try during this camp that you learned today? Yes, thank you. Okay, yeah, so focusing more on the positive than the negative. Sorry, I know we have microphones. I can repeat the responses too. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So staying in the moment, the mindfulness piece of like focusing on your senses, that allows you to stay in the moment rather than thinking about what's in the future or what's in the past. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. So what he's saying is focusing more on the details. What can I do in the moment to kind of do better rather than focusing on the outcome or who I'm supposed to be or who I'm trying to be. So your form, your technique, whatever it is. What else? Let's have one more if we can. Okay, I appreciate the wording too. So some mindfulness, again, to stay in the moment or? Yeah, so primarily motion management, yeah. I know you had another hand up here, if you don't mind. Bless you. Yeah, I love that one too, and I meant to talk about it a little bit more. So relying on teammates for support, and that's another piece I talk about with all like the new football players coming into JMU, where asking for help is a skill as well. And that's a really important skill. It's gonna help you serve you outside of sport down the line too, but it's something you can start right now where you just rely on your teammates and go up to them and maybe they notice that you're struggling, but obviously being honest with them, being vulnerable with them, but just utilizing that social support that you have. If there is something specific, I think for you guys kind of answered in general, but is there anything specific that you want to take beyond this camp? Is there anything else that we talked about that you're like, all right, maybe I can't do it right now, but I can do it later on? Yes, back there. Yes, I need a microphone. So we're going to get a microphone too. I know there was another person over here too. Thank you.
Like not thinking I'm bad if I don't PR'd in a race.
Not thinking about just the PRs in a race, you said?
Not thinking I'm bad at running.
Okay, yeah. You're not thinking about bad. You don't think you're bad at running because you don't PR in a race. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and again, that's maybe phrasing that a little bit different, or thinking about the positives even though I didn't PR too. So again, a little bit mindset shift, but ultimately again, not necessarily focusing only on the negatives in a race. I know there was another hand up over here somewhere, I think. Yeah, right there.
Definitely like a lot more of a challenge mindset versus a threat mindset for me in like academics, because I kind of approach tests as, can I get the 100% versus can I feel comfortable during the test?
Yeah, and I love that too. Again, it's that switching the success. What does success mean? And it could even be not necessarily relating to your performance on the test, but just feeling better, feeling less anxious on that test as well, using mindfulness or other skills to do that as well. Anything else? All right, so the last question I have then, what other ways of managing emotions work for you? So obviously we talked about that mindset, we talked about mindfulness, we talked about social support. Is there anything that you've done in the past or that you've wanted to try that's not anything that I talked about today that you're willing to share with some of the people in here? Yes. Oh, 1 second.
For me, like listening to music helps a lot. Like helps me calm down when I'm anxious.
Yeah. So you said prior to a race, or?
Yeah, prior to a race.
So I don't know if everyone heard, but just listening to music, that was something I was going to share too. For a lot of people, what I've seen, so I played basketball in college as well, and most people had headphones on before a game. Even with sprinters, a lot of times they wear headphones before they compete. And one thing I want to share with that too, for me, that didn't work at all. If I had music in, I actually got more anxious. So that's another piece to keep in mind. Obviously, we have different strategies. Again, some of these mindfulness things might not work for you. It might make you more nervous. But ultimately, realizing that there are a lot of different ways. So again, listening to music is another good way. Anything else that we have?
What I do before my races is like maybe 2 or 3 days before, I'll imagine how I'm gonna feel on the starting line before, or like, or a couple hours before, and I accept how I'm gonna feel. Like I think like how I'm gonna feel what I think, and I just accept that that's what I'm gonna feel.
Okay, yeah. And that reminds me, so in a sense, preparation. So how am I going to feel in a couple of days when I'm going to compete? And part of it is in terms of like a mindfulness thing, like putting yourself in that state already. It ties in with visualization as well. I don't know if people know what visualization is, but pretty much like visualizing yourself being in a certain moment or experiencing something. And that's kind of what it sounds like, visualizing yourself being there at a meet prior to competing. The other thing I wanted to share too, what you mentioned, yeah, the preparation piece that can help as well with kind of managing emotions. Obviously, it takes a little bit more work ahead of time, but in a sense, preparing yourself for that moment. Obviously, at practice, you're doing it already. Nutrition, again, drinking enough beforehand, sleeping enough, but just what other things can you do to prepare for that moment too? Do we have one more? Yes.
For me, it helps to remember who I'm running for. Like in a race, like my teammates, I think we're all remember we're running for God, and then also for each other, and just remembering, like being in the moment for all that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it sounds like it helps you be in the moment too. So again, realizing who you're running for, and it could be for God, it could be for the teammates around you, it could even be for like parents or family members. But again, who am I running for? That a lot of times, from the sounds of it, obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but like maybe gets you excited or gets you more into the race, might be another piece. All right. So I just have a couple. Just a couple quotes up here from. I'm pretty sure they're Olympians this year. I know Nia Akins is an 800 runner. I forget exactly. I know he does distance. Graham Blank from Harvard, I believe. 5,000. Thank you. But just a couple quotes that relate to a little bit what we talked about today, a little bit to mental health as well. With Nia Akins, the main quote I really liked of hers is the second one we talked about today a little bit. If I hit the times, that's great. But if I don't hit the time and I still showed up as my best self, then I won't regret anything. And again, that's that changing what success actually means. And also realizing like I still did well. Even though I didn't hit the time I wanted to hit, I still did well, and I'm focusing on what I'm doing in the moment. And for Green Blank, for me, it was kind of the bottom one. When the gun goes off during the first 200 meters, he often thinks it's not your day. You're not going to win this race today. You will get it next time. Instead of being discouraged, he finds comfort in these thoughts, recognizing them as a normal part of the race's most uncomfortable moments. And again, it's that part of like acknowledging and accepting those negative feelings that will come up, but then also realizing like that doesn't control how I perform. We always have negative thoughts coming up, but they don't necessarily mean that we're gonna do bad, right? So again, just acknowledging that they're there, and then realizing we can move on from that. We can accept them, and we can kind of change the outcome of that ultimately, or change what we're gonna do with those negative thoughts ultimately. All right, so that was pretty much it. So the last slide I have up here is just contact information. So the QR code is just our Instagram account that we post occasionally some mental performance aspects. Like I said, these slides will be shared with you. Also have an infographic that kind of summarizes what we talked about today. Also have up here contact information for us. So we do one-on-one mental performance meetings, also clinical psychology, so mental health related stuff. And then also have this at the bottom left, kind of cut off a little bit, but psychologytoday.com. We can actually find providers in the community wherever you are based on maybe mental performance. It may be related to anxiety or different aspects. But just for you, if you want to have more information, obviously you can reach out to me or us, and you can reach out to kind of other professionals in that realm as well. But before we end, I also want to open up to any questions anyone has before we end. Any thoughts, any questions in general? Maybe even anything you wanted to share that I didn't talk about today. Oh, sorry, right there.
So I've always heard that like excitement and nervousness are very similar, like psychologically. So often I just tell myself like I'm excited when I'm nervous, and I feel like that kind of helps. Am I just?
No, that's great. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I love that too, because it is, for me at least, I think there's different ways of interpreting it, but excitement and anxious or nervous are kind of on the same spectrum.
Yeah.
If you're too excited, you get nervous because you start worrying rather than like being excited about competing. And there's a lot of times, at times I talk about this with athletes, there's different levels of anxiety that people perform well on. So for me, when I was competing, the best I ever competed was when I barely had any anxiety. Then most of my teammates, when they were really anxious or really excited, is when they performed their best. But again, keeping in mind that it depends on you where that anxiety level is or that excitement level is. But ultimately, it is excitement. It's the same thing. It's just maybe too high in that moment. And I like just reinterpreting it, just telling yourself like, well, it is the same thing. Can a lot of times literally just saying that can help kind of manage that too. Appreciate it, yeah. Any other questions or anything else you want to share? Anything the coaches maybe want to add too? So good.
Maybe there's a difference or maybe a greater need for athletes to do mental performance training in such an individual sport like running compared to like a team sport like football or basketball?
I would definitely say so, because there's way less, especially distance running, I would say, because there's way less chance to give social support and get social support while you're competing. Obviously, you have probably coaches kind of calling out your times and your splits and stuff like that. But in basketball or other sports, you have a timeout where you can kind of come together and talk, and coach can sit with you in that environment and talk it through. With running, especially distance running, you can't really do that. So I do believe, I think mental performance aspects like mindfulness are more important in running than they are in most other sports or individual sports than other sports. What it reminded me of too is I think overall it's becoming a lot more important nowadays because people are performing at such a high level that every single thing that can get you a little bit better is going to help. Is going to get you maybe kind of getting to Olympic trials even, or getting into a college. So again, every little thing with performance, including mental performance, including what I mentioned earlier, nutrition, whatever, sleep, people focus a lot more on those pieces nowadays because you need to, because everyone has very similar training for the most part, or knows what it's looked like to run, or knows the technique and things like that. Appreciate the question. Any other questions? Anything else the coaches maybe want to add, or thoughts? Or any questions in general? All right, well, that was it. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you guys focusing. Thank you. And I'll still be around if you guys have time. If people want to ask me maybe one-on-one questions, I'll still be around too.
Thank you. That was very, very well done. Let's give him another round of applause. All right, for the rest of the today, things changed a little bit this afternoon. We're not running this afternoon, as I said this morning, so I'm quickly going to go over the schedule for the rest of the day until the afternoon session. So we have lunch from 12 to 1. Green is at 12, red 12:15, yellow 12:30. From 1:30 to 3 is your team challenge. Okay, 3:30 to 4:15 is dorm cleanup. So we ask counselors, you be on your floor in your dorm, making sure you're supervising that. It's just basically organizing bathrooms, everything, not just your room. Just get ahead of things a little bit so Friday morning is not too hectic. And then 4:15 p.m. is back in here, Lehman Auditorium. We do day 2 of mini sessions. So just like yesterday when we did mini sessions, except obviously you'll go to a different building and sit through 3 different mini sessions, okay? And then dinner is at 6. So